Welcome to this edition of the Fire Marshal's Corner. I'm your host, Richard Blankenship. And today we're going to discuss some very good issues today. I got my special friend here from the firehouse. I got Chief Pearcy here with me today. We're going to talk a little bit about Laurel Fire Department just celebrating 116 years of service to the citizens of Laurel and surrounding counties. Again, as I do every time I have this conversation, when I do this show, I always talk about smoke alarms, how important it is to have that. We're going to discuss a little bit about carbon monoxide detectors. Thanksgiving's coming up here in the next few weeks. We want to talk a little bit about holiday, about cooking with deep fryers. We're going to talk about, we just did Fire Prevention Month here last month in October. We're going to talk about the theme of that, what it was this year. And then we're also going to talk about Stop the Bleed campaign that the mayor's office is adamant about getting this program out to the citizens and what to do to help control bleeding. My first guest today, like I said, is Travis Pearcy. Travis is the Chief of Laurel Volunteer Fire Department. Travis has been a member there for a large number of years. I've had the opportunity to work with Travis when I was the chief. He worked under me as an assistant chief and a deputy chief for a number of years. So he's been around a little bit. He's got a good idea about what's going on. So we're just going to ask him some questions today. And, you know, like I said, they're celebrating 116 years of service to the community of Laurel and the surrounding counties. That's a long time. I'm happy to say that the 100th anniversary, I was the fire chief at the 100th anniversary. So I was happy to be pleased to be the chief of that and be part of that, because that was a big deal for 100 years of service for what we do around Laurel. Chief, welcome to the show. I'm glad you took that time today to come and visit with us.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
How did this? I know we every October we have a banquet to celebrate the anniversary of the department. At one time we had like 3 or 4 fire stations in Laurel, didn't we?
Yeah, if you go back to our history, we had 3 stations that I'm aware of, 2 hose companies and a ladder company. And then through history books, most stuff I've learned via Joe Robertson, those companies merged and we became the Laurel Volunteer Fire Department. Company number 1 incorporated is our official title. And this is our 116th year as an incorporated department. However, the history books show us actually going back probably another 15 or more years on record, just not as a corporation. But yes, we started as 3 companies, we merged. And in fact, things I've learned from members such as yourself and Joe Robson and some people who have been around and know some of the history, you could drive through Laurel and still see a large majority of our old firehouses. They've been repurposed, but they still exist at their addresses. So it's really, really neat history.
Yeah, I know one of the fire stations is where a little tavern used to be. Now it's called Laurel Donut Shop. The Armory was a fire station. For people to get their hair cut in Laurel at Sly's Barbershop, that was one. And then the Harrison Beard Building, which was at that one time was the old police station after the fire department moved across the street at 901 Montgomery Street. Yep. When I joined in '69, we was at 901 Montgomery Street, and then we moved to Cherry Lane where we're at today. I remember when I first joined there, we had, I think the first year there, we ran like 98 calls, you know, and that was a big deal, you know. Me being 16 years old, getting a chance to ride a fire truck and run some calls was very exciting. And then I think like the second year we ran like 125 calls. But I think as of today and over the years, the population and the construction and everything else, I think we're up to what now, like almost 5,500 calls a year?
Yeah, it's somewhere between 4,500 and 5,500. This year, right now, we're at a little over 2,000 ambulance calls, I believe. And we're at about 1,400 engine calls right now. We're on track to clear about 4,500 this year.
Wow, that's a lot of running. That's a lot of dedication for the people that volunteer their time to do that. If somebody wanted to volunteer, how could they get involved in this? They wanted to do that.
The easiest way for somebody who wants to volunteer is to go to our website, laurelvfd.org. Mm-hmm. And on our website, there's a button you can click that says join us or become a volunteer. And you'll fill out a quick form with some contact info. And our membership committee will contact you and set you up with our once a month new member orientation. It's on a Sunday evening. It takes about 3 hours. You'll get a full orientation of what's expected of you, what the volunteer position entails, the amount of time you'll have to commit over the next few years. You'll get a tour of the station. It's conducted by various different officers of the company. You'll get to meet a lot of people. And then once you do that, you'll leave with some paperwork to start your process of becoming a volunteer through the county system. And part of that includes doing a couple of ride-alongs at the station to get to know people and fully understand what we do. And if you're good with everything and comfortable at that point, you move to the next step. Once your background check is completed through the county, you'll get a county physical. Once you get that completed, you'll be issued an ID number. And at that point, you become a member of the department. And I guess in theory, it's all downhill from there.
And then all this is free, and nothing you really have to as a person is just put in the time. Everything else is free for you to do that.
Everything about the volunteer organization in Prince George's County, at least at the Laurel Volunteer Fire Department, is 100% free. All of our classes, all of the training, once you're a member, you're entitled to all of that through the University of Maryland's Maryland Fire and Rescue Institute. There's no restrictions on what classes and training you take and how much of a career you make out of it. As you well know, a lot of our members are career firefighters somewhere else, and they still continue to volunteer. You're a perfect example of that. You're retired from a career department yourself and maintained your volunteer status your whole career and still do. So it's a great stepping stone. It's a great tool for someone who wants to get into a career of fire service, but also wants to help serve this community. It's a great way to do it, and it is completely free, and there's a lot of opportunities to learn and grow.
Now, I know this past election in January, you was elected as the fire chief. Now, how many years you been in the department?
This is my 20th year with the department. This is my 3rd term as the fire chief. At this point in my career, thanks to some great mentors and some really inspiring people that helped me grow through the department, took me under their wing as junior officers and assistant chiefs and such. I've been elected to every operational rank and appointed to sergeant at some point in my career, and I've been the junior vice president. So I've stayed busy with the department, but I've tried to make my experience very diverse so that I fully understand what's going on with the department and the community. And I've had a great relationship over the years with the city of Laurel, Marty Flemian in particular. Marty has just retired, so I'm building that relationship with Billy Goddard and Steve Allen, as there have been some changes in the city with that retirement, and we're continuing to grow that. But the community and the city are probably the number 2 priority to me, my station and personnel being my number 1. But that's what we're here for, and that's why we exist. So.
Now, you spend a large number of hours there during the week with meetings and running calls and handling any issues. How many hours a week do you put in there just volunteering?
Well, if you promise not to tell my wife, it's probably close to 50 or 60. I probably am there. My career, my job allows me to be flexible so that I can work from the firehouse numerous days during the week. So I'll come in the afternoon to be there at 3 o'clock when our career personnel leave and it becomes volunteer staffed to ensure our staffing levels. And I'll typically stay till 5 or 6, and then most nights I'll come back later in the evening or even spend the night depending on what's going on with meetings and such.
And you're married and got some kids too, right?
Yep, been married to my wife Stacy for 14 years, and we have 2 daughters, a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they definitely keep me busy.
Yeah, I can vouch for that one. And like I said earlier, I know we just celebrated 116th year for the fire department, but one of the processes that we do at the annual banquet is the membership decides, they vote on who they want to be firefighter of the year. And I've had the opportunity back in the early 70s, I was elected as a firefighter of the year, and that was a big honor for me to be able to get that. And all the recipients after me, it was, they were happy to do the same thing. And I'm happy to say that Travis, you was selected to be firefighter of the year this year.
I was truly honored. It's something that I believe most of our members and firefighters at some point aspire to receive that award. It's quite an honor, but it's not something you ever expect to get. And I was given that award this year by the membership, and I'm honored to receive it. But the grounds that they gave it to me on, I truthfully could not have done it without my officers and my membership. They're the reason that we continue to function strongly. I just stepped in and made sure that the steering wheel was being held. But I'm honored to have received that award and joined the ranks of many notorious members of our department.
Yeah, and I said this many, many times when I was chief. I was chief like 13 times, and your officers and your members make you look good. You know, if you're on a fire or whatever the situation is, as long as they keep busy and doing a good job, it makes you look good. Well, Chief, I'm ask you, I'm going to talk a little couple things. I want to talk about smoke detectors, and every time I do the show, I talk about this because it's hard to make people understand how important it is to have an operating smoke alarm. You know, I know the city, any rental property within the city limits of Laurel has to have a smoke alarm. They have to have one on each level, and we require them to have them in the bedroom as well. And then this new state law went in this past year that homes have to have the 10-year sealed smoke alarms. Now, if you have a smoke alarm that you just recently put in like a year and a half ago, you know, you're okay with that. You just got to remember to change the batteries. And it's coming up to that time of the year now, this weekend coming up on the 4th, you change your clock, you change your batteries. And that's a campaign that's been for a number of years to do that. If you don't have an operating smoke alarm, a lot of times because they don't have batteries in them or the batteries are dead, or sometimes the units are taken down. Now, I'm sure you probably have your career seen quite a few that the batteries are there, the people taking them down.
You see quite a few smoke detectors. It's one of the things that, as an officer, especially a chief officer, we're trained to look for because it's part of our report. It's something that the state actually monitors pretty regularly on all fire incidents. So we go looking for them, and quite often you'll find them on the wall and a lot of times melted and non-functional. So you go back to the first initial crews and you ask them if they recall hearing it. And it's probably, sadly, only about a 50-50 chance that it worked. I recently was actually on a fire here in Laurel. It was outside of the city limits, but it was here in the town of Laurel. And I was one of the first chiefs, or the first chief on the inside as part of the command team, and the smoke alarm was sounding. And it was in a sprinkled home where the sprinklers failed, and the occupants reported that the smoke alarm is what alerted their family on the second floor and evacuated the house before the fire had gotten too large. So they did their job, and they were still functioning when we were there. So we do see them. It is something that we see regularly. We encourage everyone to get the new 10-year battery smoke alarms. But just because it's a 10-year battery, Kat, people don't think they have to test them. And you still, every time it's time to change your clock, we encourage everyone to do a test of their smoke detector to ensure that it's properly functioning, because even though it's a 10-year battery, something might go wrong with it. You would need to know. But we are big supporters of that program. And we will even come out and help install them if we have residents in the city who have a hard time, maybe don't have a step ladder or something, or don't know the best way to install it. They're very simple. They just screw right onto the wall. And just like you said, hallways, bedrooms, kitchens, garages, certain areas, we like to ensure that they're in there for early warning devices.
Yeah, you should definitely have one on each level, each bedroom. That's very important to have that. And like I said, this weekend coming up, before you go to bed Saturday night, make sure you set your clock back 1 hour. And like the chief said, if you cannot install it, replace the battery yourself, please don't hesitate to call them, or you can call the city fire marshal's office, or you can call the local rescue squad. We'd be happy to come out and do that, because we want to make sure that all the citizens in the city and around the city do have operating smoke alarms. They do save lives and they do work. Now we'll talk a little bit about the carbon monoxide detectors. If you have any gas appliances in your house, or you have an attached garage to your house, or if you have a fireplace, we recommend that you have a carbon monoxide detector. And those you should have on each level, is that correct?
That's correct. A lot of people believe that carbon monoxide is heavier than air, so they're always in the basement or the bottom of the house. It's actually more neutrally buoyant, and you can have carbon monoxide in all areas of the house. And quite often it tends to pocket in closets and things like that. So we always recommend having one on each level. And just like you mentioned, any gas appliance, any wood-burning fireplace, any gas fireplace, attached garage, even a shed that's attached to the house that might have a generator or a lawnmower in it that you could leave running or put away before it's cooled off. All of those things will produce carbon monoxide. So the detectors are great. One of the options that's on the market these days as well is a combination smoke detector, CO detector. It helps reduce the cost a little bit, and it allows you to buy a few units and put better coverage in your house as well.
Now, what kind of symptoms would you have if you had carbon monoxide poisoning?
So everyone's a little bit different. There's quite a few, but very common is a headache and nausea, upset stomach or vomiting, very groggy and sleepy feeling.
Kind of like the flu?
Kind of like the flu, exactly. Sometimes even an altered mental status, like you could be at home with a spouse or a loved one and they may not be acting or talking normal. A lot of these can be signs and symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning. And sometimes it affects some people quicker than others. So it may not be affecting you when it affects someone else. So
is that because of your age, maybe?
Age, your immune system, different things in your body. Some people are just affected differently. Yeah.
And then you just say, I think I talked to you earlier, you had a recent one about a couple months ago where the people left the car running or something?
We had a call a couple of months ago where a couple had come home from an evening of running errands and dinner, pulled into their attached garage, put the car in park, they got out and went in the house and they forgot to shut the car off. The car had run for a little over 4 hours before the wife called and said her husband was a diabetic and he wasn't acting right. So we got put out for the medical emergency, and our units got there, both our ambulance and our paramedic unit, and they carry personal CO monitors on the radios that we wear. We wear a strap and there's a CO monitor on that strap, and they were 2 or 3 feet into the house and those monitors went off, alerting them that there was an issue. They immediately stepped back out, called for the appropriate fire trucks to come help, and they removed both occupants from the house and got them into the 2 ambulances on the scene to start administering oxygen and bringing them back. And actually, both residents were taken to Johns Hopkins where they have bariatric chambers because they were both suffering CO poisoning.
Wow.
The CO levels in the house were potentially fatal levels. And so we were able to set up all of our fans and go in breathing our air tanks and everything. And we were able to open up the windows and ventilate the house, and it actually affected 2 houses on one side and 1 on the other, as they are single family homes, but they had a shared common wall similar to a townhouse design. And the CO had spread, and we actually were able to secure all the homes and clear them of the CO. We were there for quite a few hours.
Wow. And also, you just brought up a good point too about generators. You know, a lot of people have generators. If just in case they lose power, you know, make sure they're not hooked up in your garage. Even though you still use one outside, if you don't have any fireplace or gas appliances, it sure wouldn't hurt for you to have a carbon monoxide detector in the home, especially if you think you're going to need a generator for anything that happens this winter or when a storm comes through. The other thing we want to talk about, it's coming up, you know, like I said, the next 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to be celebrating Thanksgiving. I know a lot of people like to cook turkeys with a deep fryer. The question that the fire marshal's office asks here is one, if you're not familiar with it, and even though you are familiar with it, you should make sure that you read all the instructions and the safety guidelines for using these these things as cooking, because a lot of people sometimes they throw the grease in, they get it hot, then they throw a cold turkey in there or a frozen turkey right out of the bag, and next thing you know, they have a big fire. Chief, you got any suggestions on that about what you've seen?
Well, I'll tell you, historically, between Christmas and Thanksgiving, our department usually runs one fire incident per holiday per year. And 95% of them, I would say, are cooking related. And the recent fad has been to deep fry your turkeys. And we have run probably 3 or 4 decks on fire that will push up and extend into the house and create bigger issues. If you want to see what's truly possible for misusing a deep fryer, I recommend going to YouTube and looking up deep fried turkey. Some of the videos are pretty scary, to be honest. As soon as that grease boils over and hits that open flame, it's off to the races. And if you're close to your house or a car or anything flammable, it's not going to take long to go. And quite a few people over the years have been burned. We've run quite a few burn calls for the same thing because it splashes when you put them in. So I agree with the fire marshal's office. Make sure you understand how to use the appliance properly and you've read all the instructions. And if you don't know, the internet's a powerful tool. Look it up. It'll tell you exactly what to do the right way. It'll save you a lot of heartache and possibly even save you some property.
Yeah, we are going to have an attached video that you can watch on this show just to see what happens if you fail to comply with the regulations of how to use one of these cookers. I've never had a fried turkey, but people say it's very good, and a lot of people still use them. Like I said, this past month was Fire Prevention Month. I know the Fire Marshal's office, we went out to all the local schools here, in the city schools, and did a show and tell for the kids and talked about stop, drop, and roll and smoke alarms and stuff like that. The theme for this year was look, listen, and learn. Every year they come up with a new theme for people to think about. And when they got to the thing, they was like, look for things around your house that can cause a fire. You know, take the kids, show them. If you see something that doesn't look right, you know, let them see it. Get your whole family involved in that. You want to make sure that your home is safe. Listen for the sound, what a smoke detector sounds like. What's a carbon monoxide detector sound like? Because both of these two items will have two different sounds. One of the things you want to make sure that your family is well aware that we teach kids to sleep with the doors closed, because it keeps any smoke, if a fire starts at nighttime, it'll keep the smoke from going into the bedrooms. They need to understand what that smoke alarm sounds like with the door closed. And learn, the thing was, always have 2 ways out of the bedroom. We always teach the kids, like, your door's your number one spot. If you're laying in bed, you hear the smoke alarm, you roll out of bed onto the floor, you crawl over to the door, and you feel the door and feel if it's hot. If it is, don't open it. Go to a window and hang right there. The fire department will get you out. If you can't get out, like I said, go to the window and they'll help you. So you should always have 2 ways out, and everybody should know that. The other thing is, once you get out of the house, you need to have a place to go to that everybody in the family knows exactly where to go. So that way you can account for everybody. That's a good feeling for the fire department when they get on the scene of a call and you tell the chief or the officer in charge that, hey man, all my family's right here, we're all counted for. If you're gonna go away for a couple of days, let your neighbors know, so that way they can say, hey man, they're not home, you know. We're gonna check it anyhow because the firefighters are trained, if I'm not mistaken, to search anyhow. No matter if you say they're out, they're gonna search the rooms anyhow.
That's correct.
Because I think the fire department is a process that they had to go do what they call a primary and secondary search and all those things.
That's correct, and they're required on all incidents, whether it's reported everyone's out or not.
Right.
I can tell you too, we see a lot of, and it's kind of scary, being a code guy myself, you see a lot of homes that have converted rooms into bedrooms, but they don't have a true window, which means there isn't a second way out. And code requires a 36-inch window to make it a legal bedroom and a closet. So without those spaces, it's not truly a legal bedroom, but you see that quite often without that second way out. And code also says, you said sleeping with the door closed. It's something that I'm a big proponent of and encourage, because even the residential door in your house is still a fire rated door, and it buys you at least 30 minutes of safe time behind that door when that door is closed. And sometimes that's enough time for the fire department to come in and put the fire out without fire ever breaching that room if you need to shelter in place. So it's another reason we encourage that. The last part of that is, and the big thing for us with that window, if you're in an apartment building and you're at an elevated height, you can open that window and stay in that window, and we are trained to search those and recognize those from the outside. And here at the Laurel Volunteer Fire Department, we have a 105-foot aerial ladder. So if we're running our ladder truck on the call, we can get, with proper positioning, up to 10 stories that we can get right to your window to rescue you. So windows are always a good second way out based on the location of the fire.
And they also, if you go to your window and hang there, they always send somebody around the back to do a 360 to the entire building to see if anybody's hanging out or there's a sheet there or something like that.
That's correct.
So they're trained to come in and get you out of there. The other thing you don't want to do is, if you can't get out the door, is hide. It's hard for them to come in when it's smoky and crawling around and trying to find you. And if you're hiding, it's just going to take longer to get you out of the house. So go to the window if you can't get out your door. If you hear the door open and there's a firefighter in there, holler and tell them where you're at so they can get you out of there. The other thing is that everybody should have an escape plan. We all get that feeling, well, it's not going to happen to me. Or at least we hope it's not going to happen to us. But then sometime when the situation changes, that's not the time you want to say, man, I wish I had a plan. So you want to be proactive in all this stuff, teach the kids, like I said, what's that smoke alarm sound like when that door's closed. Everybody, like I teach the kids, we all know how to get out of the house. Mom calls, hey, it's time to go to school. We get up, we get dressed, we go outside. But maybe the next time, let's set the smoke alarm with you in the house and let's blindfold you and see how long it takes you to get out of the house. That you got to crawl to get out of there. So it's important to do those things. The other thing we want to talk about now before we wrap the show up is a Stop the Bleed campaign. They were doing a bunch of studies and they're figuring out that a lot of these bombings, mass shootings, multiple vehicle accidents, and even home accidents, people are dying because of uncontrolled bleeding. Uncontrolled bleeding is the most frequent cause of preventable death from injury. And there's a nationwide campaign out there called Stop the Bleed campaign. And the mayor has decided he wanted to kick this program off here this November. Because like I said, the mayor is very vigilant about getting this done, because he knows how important it is to have this done. So the name's on the bottom. You can contact the register. We'd love to have you come out and participate in this.
Kat, I can tell you that we have a handful of AED, CPR, and even Stop the Bleed instructors at the station. And unless we're tied up on calls or busy that day, we intend to be there as the fire department to help with this program, be able to help our citizens and answer any questions. I can tell you the technology for Stop the Bleed has come from the military, and they found a lot of great success with it. And we've all gone through a tactical training program in the fire service, how to use the Stop the Bleed and how to use military-style tourniquets for these types of emergencies, because it is something that has changed over time. And I know that Prince George's County is also working on a program. Of course, in typical fashion, the city's a step or two ahead of them, which we're always proud of. But it's going to be at a minimum, countywide program. I would expect it at larger levels than that here in the near future. But it's great training and a great program that the city's offering for free to all of its residents. So I would encourage everyone to attend.
Yeah, we just had a instructors class here a couple months ago for this program. Also, we do AED CPR. All the police cars in the city now carry AEDs. I carry one in my car. Some of the other code enforcement guys got them. They do work. The AEDs do work. Matter of fact, in the city we've had a couple saves of our own people here, where we had that, and they had a couple calls. Because sometimes people will ask, like, I call for an ambulance, and sometimes maybe a fire truck will show up or a police car will show up. I know in the city now, if Laurel, someplace in the city, if they get a call for one stop breathing, unconscious, whatever the case may be, that the city police department dispatches their officers to that location. Like I said, a couple of times they've been there and they've made a big difference in somebody's life. So, but this program here is an excellent program, and I sure hope that we get a really good response for that. And like I said, I know that knowing the mayor as well as I know him, that he's going to continue with this program. And I know Bill, being the new city administrator, is going to support it as well.
And you had said, I believe, all city buildings have an AED in them?
All the city buildings have AEDs. The swimming pools, they have two. They have one for an adult, one for a child. So that's...
we keep them physically mounted in the firehouse. Of course, all of our fire trucks and ambulances have them. I know that if you've paid attention when you go to the airport, you see them. A lot of places publicly have them now. So this training is great because, like you said, if you can get an AED applied within the first 2 to 3 minutes, chances of saving a life are huge.
Absolutely. Early detection and early defibrillation is a key to cardiac arrest.
That's correct.
It's really important to that. Well, Chief, I thank you for taking time out to come out today. It's been enjoyable talking with you. I know you and I talk about fire department shop every time we see each other. That's just the way we are. We grew up in the fire department like that. But the one thing I like to do today is I like to dedicate this show to two individuals that's been a real asset to this city over the years. One being Marty A. Fleming III. Marty just retired with 43 years of service with the city. Marty came up through public works and stuff like that, and ended up being an assistant city administrator, and then he was the city administrator. I've had the opportunity to work with Marty for a number of years as chief of the fire department, also here as an employee, and I enjoyed every minute of his time. He was very knowledgeable about the city. He knows a lot what's going on, and he's been a world of difference to the city and also the fire department and the surrounding people in the state. Also like to dedicate this show to his sister, who just recently passed away about a month ago, Jean Dean. She was also a city council person for a number of years, and she always kept herself active in city government and helping where she could. And both these people were real great to the city. And like I said, I like to dedicate this show today to them because they definitely deserve it. That's it. Time for it.